Jack Nicklaus told me this 30 years ago. Some days you just don't have it. I mean, some days your ability just isn't going to be there, and you're going to have these horrendous rounds, right? So I think in those days, you just have to just accept that this is going to be one of those bad days. I think, again, it comes down to sort of the nature of your own consciousness and what level of control you actually truly have from an empirically proven sort of scientific standpoint. What can you really do from a conscious mind perspective? Control your body and therefore your club motion with some type of repeatability to create a successful outcome. The blunt truth is, if you're in that range of around 6 handicap or higher, you probably have one or more mostly repeating sort of toxic fatal flaws that sometimes you can compensate for on a good day, and sometimes on a bad day you can't.
Golf Smarter, number 737, is brought to you by CryoFreeze Pain Relief Roll-On. PGA pro Kyle Stanley uses CryoFreeze CBD to recover both on and off the golf course. And their product reviews showcase 95% of 5-star reviews. There's page after page of customers saying they've tried everything, and Omax CryoFreeze is so good, they're now buying it for family and friends. And you know I've done the same. So try CryoFreeze Pain Relief Roll-On. Go to omaxhealth.com. That's O-M-A-X, omaxhealth.com, and enter code GolfSmarter to get 20% off CryoFreeze and site-wide. Getting control of your frustration during a bad round of golf. From our Yoda of Yips, Jim Waldron.
This is Golf Smarter, sharing stories, tips, and insights from great golf minds to help you lower your score and raise your golf IQ. Here's your host, Fred Greene.
Welcome back to the Golf Smarter podcast, Jim.
Thank you, Fred. Great to be back. I don't know, is this the 25th episode, 24th, something like that?
Something crazy like that. It's just a good time to be able to talk to you. I'm glad that you're healthy and surviving this. You were in Hawaii, but you're now back in Oregon, right?
Yeah, I got back about a week and a half, actually, about almost exactly a week ago,
Yeah. And health, good? Family, good?
A little bit of a cold, but nothing like the virus, no, just a common cold.
Well, luckily we have, like 6 states of separation here right now. No, actually, a couple 100-mile separation. That should work.
Yeah.
I think that's good.
Yeah.
And we're in a crazy time. We want to go play golf. We love to play golf. We can't stop thinking about going out and playing golf, especially if the sun is out. But it's too scary. I mean, courses
the course
open.
where I teach in Portland is still open, but they're doing staggered tee time instead of every 8 minutes or every 16 minutes, so slow play doesn't cause people to congregate on tee boxes.
And anybody complaining about the slow play?
And apparently not. I mean, and the course is full. They're filling up all the tee sheet and the driving range. They're making the team. The spaces on the driving range are a little further apart, so people don't get too close. And although the Hawaii course I teach at Ko'olina, they closed a week ago today. And their tournament, their LPGA event, the Latte Open, which was scheduled for 2 weeks from now, was canceled. So it's just, I think it sort of depends where you live and, how serious people are taking it. But it'll be an interesting year for sure. Yeah. Definitely. I'm still doing some online lessons. I'm still doing a lot of Yips people I'm still hearing from.
Of course.
But my schools, I had my first 2 weeks of May were already booked and everybody canceled because people don't want to be out and about, especially flying to Portland on an airline. So yeah.
And we're recording this. It's March 27th as we record this, and in 2020, obviously, these crazy times. The students you've been talking to, do you get a sense of increased anxiety that they are bringing onto the golf course if they even get to go out?
I think the general population's having anxiety for sure. We were talking earlier. I worked with a new student who's not even a golfer yesterday from Europe, from the UK, who is having anxiety just about the virus in general. So, that's kind of one of my specialties, as you know, is dealing with the yips. And all the yips is the yips is just the extreme end of golfer anxiety, the extreme end of the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, even in normal times, golfers struggle with various forms of anxiety over a golf shot. And
Right.
we can talk a little bit about that and what my approach to dealing with that is.
Please do. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I think, when I do these, whether it's one-on-one with a private school or sometimes I do clinics with a couple hundred people there, this topic comes up a lot. And I tell people, the mental game is a huge topic. There's probably, a dozen or more major categories of things to discuss about the mental game. But the one that I think gets short shrift and shouldn't is understanding how, as a human being / golfer, your relationship with failure is a big, big aspect of it. The only person I know on the professional tours who talks about this regularly is Brooks Koepka. And apparently he went from being a middle-of-the-pack mini-tour player to a world beater in about 3 years because he found a way. He doesn't say how. He says it wasn't by seeing a sports psychologist. He's discovered it on his own. He found a way to accept failure without letting it affect him deeply on a mental or an emotional level. Because remember, even for tour pros, most of the time they don't hit the target exactly the way. I mean, they don't send the ball to the target exactly as they intended.
Well,
so
that's
even
golf.
for a tour pro, it's golf. So in other words, in golf, the norm is to fail somewhere between, for a tour pro, it might be 60% to 80% of the time they fail in some moderate to or even worse way. And for an average golfer, they're failing 90% plus. Right. It's no wonder people keep playing the game because it's just one
because
failure
on the
after
18th hole they get one good shot.
I know.
It's like I can't wait to play again.
Yeah, I know. But when you understand that failure and your anticipation of failure, and then your reactive mind, both mentally and emotionally, being mentally and emotionally reactive, which is sort of a term from psychotherapy, can lead to bad choices, bad decision making in terms of what target to pick, what club to pick to send the ball to your chosen target. It can lead to flinching, which we've talked about forever on this podcast.
Yeah.
And all a flinch is one or more muscles tightening up a slight amount that shouldn't be doing that. A flinch is a micro version of a yip. A yip is just a high intensity flinch, and a flinch is a low intensity yip, right? So, so understanding about how to deal with the fact that failure is a common occurrence on a golf course, to me, is a really, really big deal in golf.
But how do you sell that? I mean, you don't want to have a new student that walks up to you and you say, first thing you need to know is failure is important to accept.
Well, it depends on the student. I mean, I have two approaches. I have what I call a basic approach of the mental game, which tends to be geared toward what I would call more average weekend players, maybe not super serious golfers, or maybe they are, but they're more high handicaps. And then I have an advanced version, which is for all my YIP students, no matter what their handicap, although most YIP students are, believe it or not, 5 handicaps or better. And then I also have that advanced program for the more serious golfers. So you have to kind of tailor the information to fit the student.
Mm-hmm.
The basic approach is nothing really, really new. It's about learning how to have a consistent pre-shot routine, stuff you've had a million people on the podcast talk about before. Having some sense of how to focus your mind. The advanced stuff deals more with the failure stuff. Basically, what it comes down to is if you didn't have any fear of failure, you wouldn't have any anxiety. If you didn't have any anxiety, you wouldn't flinch. If you don't flinch, your odds of hitting a good shot go way up, no matter what your handicap level.
No fear of failure is no anxiety.
Yeah, because anxiety is a symptom of your stress reflex kicking in.
Okay.
Your stress reflex is a symptom of the threat scan part of your brain identifying something about the golf shot you're about to hit, something about the course or the trouble in front of you as a threat. Once the threat scan system identifies a threat, and by the way, it doesn't have to be an actual threat. The threat scan system quite often, particularly when it's sort of constantly on, sees threats that aren't actually real, right? So there's two kinds of threats. There's rational threats or real threats, and there's irrational threats. Unless you're playing golf for a living and you have to make the cut that week to meet your mortgage payment, or unless you're playing in big money games, there is no actual real threat on a golf course, right?
Right.
Because the threat scan system in the brain evolved to protect your body from injury and death. It didn't evolve to protect your ego, your self-image from harm.
Damn.
So when we link our self-image to the threat scan system, that's when we create basically mental health issues for ourselves, whether on the golf course or off the golf course. Yeah. I mean, that's like 90% of psychotherapy is learning to decouple your self-image, your sense of personal identity, from things like performance, right? Mm-hmm. Especially for athletes.
Yeah, of course.
But when you take things, in other words, for example, in the Buddhist tradition and also in the Toltec tradition, which was this Central American empire that from about the late 11th century to the early 14th century, they were the premier power in Central America. They have an interesting shamanistic and spiritual tradition that you can check it out. Anybody can Google Toltec spirituality. But a big part of what they call their warrior ethos doesn't only mean literally warrior. It means learning how to deal with the inevitable suffering and disappointments, bad stuff that can happen in life in a way that allows you to still function at a high level. And one of their big aspects is called overcoming self-importance, which basically means stop identifying your ego with what it is that's happening around you, what you're trying to do. Just do your best, and whatever happens, if you fail and you're trying your best, then you just accept it. You don't freak out and overreact to it. You don't catastrophize it, right?
Yeah. There's a lot of catastrophizing going on right now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, off the golf course for sure.
Yeah, everywhere.
Well, that's what I was telling you with that guy from the other day I worked with in the UK. He's not even a golfer, but he had heard about me, and a student of mine recommended that he work with me, and we just spent 2 hours talking about accepting there are certain aspects of life that people don't like to talk about, like death, like impermanence, like suffering.
Sure.
That from my understanding of how mental health works, if you can accept the fact that death can happen at any moment, pre-virus, once this virus thing is gone and we find a vaccine, it's still going to be the same. You can die at any moment. We don't know when death's going to happen. Right?
Absolutely.
And when you can fundamentally accept death, and death is almost like a metaphor for any kind of disappointment or failure or suffering that you could experience in life. Sometimes things don't work out the way you want. You don't get your desires or your needs met in life, whether it's death, whether it's illness, whether it's the fact that you had to par the last hole to win the club championship and you bogeyed it and you missed it by one shot. It doesn't matter. Those are all forms of suffering from the Buddhist perspective, yeah? And learning to accept that there's an inevitable amount of bad stuff that's going to happen to you, and realizing you're still strong enough to overcome the negative impacts of the suffering is a big part of how I teach the mental game. Yeah.
Interesting. That's so interesting. I need to take a break here because this episode of the Golf Smarter podcast is brought to you by Omax Health and their Cryo Freeze CBD. And I'm telling you, I've been taking the Omax Health CryoFreeze drops on a morning by morning basis. Just do a dropper full in my orange juice, and I really believe that it's helping on the anxiety part. I'm curious, have you ever prescribed or recommended using CBD to your students?
Yeah, I definitely have it on the list. There's several supplements I recommend for people with yips, which if you got the golf yips, you have anxiety. That's the sort of the hallmark component of it. CBD is one of them. Have seen really good results with people with CBD. It also helps with pain, muscle spasms. I use it because I've got a kind of a chronically bad back. I use it for my both topically and orally in the drops.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely makes a big difference if you have any kind of pain in your body or muscle spasm.
Oh, I'm telling you, I've been using their roll-on on the golf course. Like, if I don't know if it's arthritis or aging or what, but I'll get some pains on various parts of my joints and my body, and I'll pull out this stuff, and within 10, 15 minutes, it's like I forgot it was there. The stuff, it's amazing.
I had a student a year ago call me, a fellow low back dysfunction / pain sufferer who called me up. He had just spent 2 nights ago. He had a major spasm, ended up in the emergency room, and they gave him all kinds of heavy painkillers, IV. It only helped a little bit. He went home. His wife went, because this is here in Oregon, which is a marijuana legal state, and they got some really powerful, I don't know what the brand was, it was super powerful CBD. And he took it, and within 2 hours of taking it, the spasm was 90% better. And the next day, he was back on the golf course.
Wow.
He went from the emergency room in less than 24 hours later, he was playing golf.
It's pretty amazing stuff. It really is. And if you have not tried it yet, you may want to look into it. Sure, you can be skeptical if you want, because it's not it's not behind the counter prescription, but I can tell you many instances of people who I'm close to who have avoided taking opioids after surgery, or got off the opioids after surgery very quickly because they've been using CBD products. But I just want everyone to consider trying the CryoFreeze from Omax Health, and to help that, Omax Health is offering Golf Smarter listeners 20% off on a full bottle of the pain relief roll-on that I was just talking about. And that discount also applies towards any of their products site-wide. So if you want to get those drops to help your anxiety, or you want to take pill for joint pain on a regular basis, it's a tablet to help joint pain. I'm doing it. I'm loving it. Sharing it with friends who are having pains. You've heard my friend Neil talk about how much he loved it and how it helped his shoulder pain. And Jim is telling students as well that it's worth the try. So go to omaxhealth.com. That's OMAX. omaxhealth.com. Enter the code GolfSmarter, and you'll get 20% off of CryoFreeze and everything else they have on their website. And we thank them so much for their continued support of all golfers who have pain and anxiety. And now back to anxiety with Jim Waldron. And thank you very much for that testimonial.
Sure.
One of the things that I suffer from, struggle with as far as anxiety and frustration on the golf course, and I'm hoping you have some insights to this, is I walk onto the golf course and I have a great attitude about it. And I know that it's not about the outcome, it's about the process. And I know that it's just about this shot. But when I have the 3 putts of the killer, but when I have a couple bad shots over a couple holes, things start deteriorating pretty quickly in my head. Recently, I went 4 rounds without losing a ball.
Wow,
yeah,
great.
I know. I was really, really happy. No, it was three full rounds. On the 4th round, I lost 5 balls on 3 holes. You can imagine what the rest of the round was like.
Oh, my God. Yeah. Right?
And it's like I'm walking down the fairway going, calm down, just relax, close your eyes, deep breathe. I'm trying, but I'm so frustrated it's lost by that point. Help.
Yeah.
Help,
yeah.
Jim Waldron, help.
Well, I mean, some days the tour pros I've talked to, Jack Nicklaus told me this 30 years ago, some days you just don't have it. I mean, some days your brain to coordinate the complex movement patterns in the golf swing just isn't going to be there, and you're going to have these horrendous rounds, right? So I think in those days, you just have to just accept that it's going to be one of those bad days. But if it's not one of those really bad days, I think, again, it comes down to, this is more on the advanced side of how I teach the mental game, but it comes down to sort of the nature of your own consciousness and what level of control you actually truly have from an empirically proven sort of scientific standpoint. What can you really do from a conscious mind perspective to control your body and therefore your club motion with some type of repeatability to create a successful outcome? And the blunt truth is, if you're probably about 6-7 handicap or higher, your golf swing, I want to specifically emphasize the swing because it's simpler movement patterns than, say, a putting stroke or a chipping stroke. I mean, those two are simpler compared to the golf swing. Golf swing is very complex, right? A lot of movement, a lot of moving parts.
Yeah.
If you're in that range of around 6 handicap or higher, you probably have one or more mostly repeating sort of toxic fatal flaws that sometimes you can compensate for on a good day, and sometimes on a bad day you can't. So there's that avenue, which is to take high quality swing instruction, work your butt off, practice, and fix your swing. The other way is to realize that you're going to have those bad shots. They're going to come out of nowhere on certain rounds of golf. And how you react to the bad shot will have an influence on how well you can execute the next shot.
Sure.
Right?
Yep, absolutely.
So I think, there's been a lot of research on this. There's the scientists who study stress have this term called the most severe form of stress is learned helplessness. When you try and you fail, and you try and you fail, and you try and you fail, till eventually you give up and you get like severely anxious and severely depressed because you feel like no matter what you do, you're never going to be successful. And we have that at golf. And what tends to happen is, well, two things. People get the yips from that. It's one way of getting the yips. Or they quit. People quit.
Yeah.
Because it's not a pleasant state to be in, the learned helplessness. Right?
Yeah, no, we had a conversation in an episode recently where it talked about so many people quitting because of frustration. That's why they quit the game.
I quit for 11 years.
Did you really?
I told you. Oh, yeah. I was playing in a junior event years ago, and I was a junior golfer in Chicago, and I shot some pretty good number. I think it was 67 or 68.
Wow.
First day of a 2-day tournament. And I
As
had
a junior golfer.
Yeah. Wow. And I shot I think an 82 on the second day and lost by, I think, 5 or 6 shots. And there was a lake by the side of the 18th hole by the green. I picked up my clubs and I threw the entire set in the lake and didn't touch a club for 11 years.
Wow.
That's how frustrated I was.
What got you to go back?
Oh, that's a whole other podcast.
No, that's just a commercial break. We'll be back right after this.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, I want as much as you can give me. We're back here, and as much as you can give me, what after 11 years?
I'll tell you what happened. So I quit when I was 15 or 14 and a half, something like that. I was living in Berkeley, early 70s. It was April. The Masters was on TV. I just happened to be. I hadn't watched a golf tournament forever, and I'm watching the Masters. I'm thinking, wow. Maybe I should take up golf again. So I go up to Tilden Park, got my motorcycle, drove up to Tilden Park Golf Course, up the hills above Berkeley.
Oh, God,
I'm sure you know it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Which is, of course, where the Cal golf team plays. And there was just an old ratty set of clubs, which they rented for $5 for the day.
Yep.
And I played 9 holes and I shot 2 over par. Yeah, I'm sure. I shot 2 over at Tilden.
After 11 years, and you're playing with the ratty old clubs, and you came out and shot 2
and I thought, wow, maybe I should take up golf again. And so I did, and then about a year later, I think I told you that story where I had a long conversation with Tom Weiskopf at Pebble Beach, and
I don't remember that conversation.
Oh well, that's. I'll tell you what, we'll do another podcast soon on some of my great stories.
Oh, absolutely, I love that.
About 2 years later, I was in your neck of the woods at Silverado Country Club.
Yep, Napa.
Tom, I think it was in 1976, maybe. Mm-hmm. Might have been 75. Tom Watson was a young up-and-comer. I think he had won once or twice. I followed him. Me and my wife followed him with his then-wife, Linda, and her friend. And it was the only people in the gallery. And we followed him for most of the 18 holes. And afterward, he came up to me and thanked me for supporting him because we were literally the only people in the get. This was on Thursday, first round. And I asked him a few questions. I said, "Can I ask you a question?" I go, "You got a few minutes?" He goes, "Yeah." I go, "I'm thinking about becoming a teaching pro." As a kid, before I quit golf, I had a strong ambition. Once I realized, which didn't take too long, I didn't have the talent to play in the PGA Tour. I thought I could be probably a good teacher.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I said to him, I've been doing all this research since I took up golf again 2 years ago. I mean, really, it's been like this passion of mine. And at some point, when I feel like I know enough, I want to kind of hang out my shingle and become a teaching pro. And he strongly encouraged me to do it. Wow. So thank you, Tom.
Yeah,
I've had a successful career this is my 30th year in the business.
That's a phenomenal story.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's really awesome. All right. I want to get back to like when things are falling apart on the golf course, right? Which we've all experienced. We all know very well. We all start beating ourselves up. We become our worst enemy, all that stuff. But our body, our posture, the whole way we present ourselves is completely different. So your body is now in a different mode as well,
right?
Because your head's down, your shoulders are slouched, and of course you start speeding up your golf swing. I'm sure, when things aren't going well, things move faster. How do you get out? What do you do to bring yourself out of that?
Well, there's a practical answer and there's a more philosophical answer. I'll give you the somewhat philosophical answer. Okay. It's actually more epistemological, which is a branch of philosophy dealing with how do you know whether something's true or not.
You really did go to Berkeley, didn't you?
Oh, yeah. Anyhow, here's the philosophical part. The issue is one reason golfers struggle and end up flinching is because part of their mind, or even most, or even all of their mind, is so focused on the outcome of the shot, they neglect to pay attention to the process which creates the shot. In other words, their mind projects itself into the future of where the ball's going to end up 5 seconds from now, to the point where they literally, by the way, when you do that, when your mind goes off into the future and you lose contact with the present moment, and I think that reality exists in the present moment. There is no future, there's no past, right? There's the fourth dimension of space and time is time. The other three dimensions are the X, Y, and Z axis, the three-dimensional space that all physical objects exist in the universe, right? So, but time is a real thing. When it's not made up by the human mind, it exists independent of human consciousness. So when you die, time still exists, right? That's the way it works. And so as soon as your mind leaves the present moment for any reason in golf, the strength of your mind-body connection weakens. And in that space between those two things, which should have a strong connection, a lot of bad stuff can happen, meaning negative thoughts and emotions can creep in and create anxiety, which can then create a flinch. So that's the first thing. You have to learn how to stay in the present moment and realize I can wait 5 to 6 seconds, depending on what the shot is, to see what the outcome is. In other words, if you could devote 100% of your mind to the process and 0% of your mind to the outcome, automatically the odds of hitting a good shot go way up. That's the philosophical part.
Yeah, but that's so important.
To me, you have to have that first before the pragmatic part. The pragmatic part is I teach people how to control their consciousness, which, as far as I know, not very many other people are doing. In other words, I teach people actual concrete tools for how to recognize what their mental and emotional state is, how it is that their mind is creating their mental and emotional state, and how to have some measure of control over it. And the term now in neuroscience for the ability to, A, both recognize what your state is, and then B, have some measure of control over it, is called meta-awareness. Meta is the Greek word for transcendent or above. And what that literally means is it's the mind. The mind has the ability to objectively observe itself and what it's doing. In normal awareness, where you don't have the meta part, your mind sort of operates on automatic. It's doing a particular task, like about to get ready to hit a golf shot. For most people, that involves using swing thoughts. So while they're setting up over the ball and they're waggling and shuffling their feet, vast majority of golfers, I don't do this and my students don't do this, but this is how most people do it. They're using a swing thought as sort of a life preserver to prevent themselves from drowning and hitting a really bad shot. So there's this sort of background of fear about the outcome of the shot or anxiety about the outcome of the shot, and the thought that if I think about this aspect of my mechanics, or if I think about positive thinking about the outcome, or some combination of the two, I'll improve my odds of hitting a good shot. And the way I teach it is completely different. What I teach people is it's possible to learn to actually control how you use your mind and to recognize various types. There's different types of awareness, and to recognize which types work well for creating a shot and which types don't work well.
And what about types that work well for certain individuals, for certain type of personalities?
Yeah, well, it's
is that true,
it's not
or no?
that part doesn't. What I'm talking about is a little bit more bigger picture than that. That part really is universal. It doesn't depend on your personality.
Okay.
Your personality has more to do with what the individual. In other words, there's consciousness, and then there's what in the Buddhist tradition are called the contents of consciousness. In other words, for example, one form of consciousness is thought or thinking, right? Mm-hmm. A completely different form of consciousness is feeling. And those are the two main ones. There's other ones, but there's the two main ones people need to recognize. Yeah, mm-hmm. And they're very, very different. So most golfers stay in the thinking mode of consciousness, not the feeling mode. And then the question is, what particular thoughts are they trying to use? What are they focusing their mind on specifically? What are they holding in their consciousness? We talked about the 3 sensory channels exercise.
Go ahead. Let's just assume we every podcast is new for me, and so let's just assume that no one's ever heard this before. So go for it.
Okay, so the basic theory is how your conscious mind works is that your brain has 3 sensory channels, three primary sensory channels that it uses to create information, right? One is visual, one is auditory or sound, and one is feeling. When you're in thinking mode, the part of you that's creating thoughts is using visual, internal pictures, or it's using sounds. And when you're in feeling mode, you're feeling physical sensations or you're feeling emotions. Yeah? Mm-hmm. Yeah? And so you can learn how to control what the contents of your consciousness are. That's a big part of it, is understanding that when you're in thinking mode, you're seeing internal visual images or you're hearing your own voice talk to yourself. And we do this all day long to accomplish, to make a living, to accomplish tasks, to do stuff. And we do it so sort of almost, I don't want to say unconsciously, but we do it so automatically. And if you're making a living with your mind as opposed to, say, someone who makes their living with their body, like an athlete or a construction worker, then the bulk of your waking moments, not to say the only, but the vast majority of time, probably 99% of your waking moments, you're in the thinking mode. Mm-hmm. You're not in the feeling mode. Whereas if you're a musician, you might spend a lot of time both in practice and performance in the feeling mode. If you're an athlete, you might spend a lot of time in the feeling mode.
Sure.
Yeah. And it's a hugely important topic, because if you're in normal consciousness, which lacks the meta-awareness part, which is the ability of your mind to recognize, it's almost like in meta-awareness, you can think of it like this: somewhere around 10% of your mind is observing what the other 90% of your mind is doing, right? With a high degree of objective understanding. So when you spend time like in a Buddhist monastery and you're doing, especially in the advanced forms of meditation practice, what you're practicing is meta-awareness. Oh. So when you're meditating, your mind is observing itself with a high degree of empirical objectivity. Yeah. Uh-huh. And in that tradition, and not just in the Buddhist tradition, other traditions too, the ability to objectively observe your mental and emotional and physical state is the foundation practice for mental health, for becoming a mentally healthier and spiritually healthier person. Awesome. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
And that's what I teach people, how to have meta-awareness. That's the foundation of everything, basically.
And you can be found at balancepointgolf.com. And if anybody wants to talk about it more with you, you're available. This is amazing stuff. This is great. And it's so helpful. And, even if you think that you've told me a story before or you've, covered something, just reiterate it. I'm fine with that. I'm good with that.
Okay, that's all right, because you're right, because you get new listeners all the time, right?
Well, there's that, and there's just my attention span. It's like,
Okay.
Jim, I've done close to 750, I've got over 400 hours of interviews. I don't remember them all. So I love talking to you, and I love hearing your stories again.
Yeah.
So prepare your stories. Start writing them down, because we're going to do an episode or two on your stories.
I've got some good ones.
Oh, I want to hear them.
Oh, seriously.
Oh, seriously, I want to hear them. Yeah. All right, buddy. Well, it's great to talk to you again. Thanks so much for your insights. As always, it's helpful.
Thank you, Fred. Good to be on the show again.
How you doing? Ain't this the craziest time we've ever witnessed together? Or apart? I mean, this is... A month or so ago, I was talking about how golf could be the best outdoor activity that allows us to practice social distancing. Especially if you're walking, which I do like 99% of the time. Well, that was a month ago. A lot has changed, to say the least. But I talked to my friend Dean, who's been driving from Marin County to Sacramento, about 90 miles, because he found a golf course that's open. So I looked into it, made sure my family was comfortable with me playing, and so Neil and I have booked a tee time for late next week. You've met Neil a couple times. Now he did the Omax CryoFreeze testimonial for us, and then last week I posted a video of my last round of golf that, of course, was with Neil. That was the last round we could play together here in California before the California shutdown of non-essential businesses. Well, not exactly sure why this course is open, so maybe I can find someone at the course who will answer my calls and we can record a conversation. No promises, but stay tuned for that. I'm real curious as to why are you open these days? Nobody else is, but I want to play golf. And everybody in my family's comfortable with me doing this, so I'm going to go do it. Anyway, I need to remind you that registration is still open for our next giveaway for a brand new pair of Squares golf shoes valued at $200. Now, that prize package includes a pair of Squares golf shoes, a Squares golf hat, some Squares socks with a squared off toe, which we heard Bob talk about last time, and a handy carrying bag. But now there's more. Have you ever heard of Caddy Daddy's Claw breathable golf gloves? I just received one last week, and I am thoroughly impressed, honestly. They're thin, they're lightweight, and yet the exclusive silicone web coating and flex mesh design provide great ventilation, and they're incredibly durable. They last 3 to 5 times longer than leather gloves, and they're machine washable, so they'll last even longer. So our next winner will receive a claw glove from caddydaddy.com and the full Squares shoes package. Deadline to enter is Sunday, April 26th, and I'm sorry if I kept saying April 25, but it's April 26th, 2020, at midnight Pacific Time, 3 a.m. Eastern. Now, when you register, you'll also find links to squares.com with a coupon code for $10 off the purchase if you want to get some shoes, which I've already had listeners write to me saying, I want those shoes. That coupon code is Golf Smarter 10. Squares is SQAIRZ, no U, squares.com. Again, check out Golf Smarter 10 for $10 off. And while you're registering, you're also going to find a link to caddydaddy.com and the coupon code to get 15% off your purchase for some of those claw gloves. Again, to win those, enter before April 26th at golfsmarter.com/giveaway2020, or just click on the banner at the top of the page of golfsmarter.com. Did you get a chance to check out the Consistent Golf Summit while you were home last week? I've heard from a number of you about it and would love to hear some more. Because if you missed it, you can still get the all-access pass to the content, slide decks, videos, and bonus materials. I'll leave a link in today's show notes and blog post for you to learn more. Plus, I'm going to tap into Bo's stable of teachers for some upcoming episodes, so please stay tuned for that. This week on Golf Smarter Mulligans, we go back to Golf Smarter episode number 137 from July 2008. This is one I really endorse because I've been using this method with lots of success ever since this discussion in 2008. The topic can be viewed as like a paradigm shift in golf instruction because we discuss target-oriented golf with Colin Cromack, who is in Australia. We spent a bunch of time talking about Skype. We were both amazed about Skype that we can talk to each other, but that was a long time ago, right? It's not that big a deal anymore. Anyway, you know that a lot of golf instruction never goes out of date, which is why these older episodes of Golf Smarter are still valid today. That's our sister podcast from the archives of 400 plus hours of Golf Smarter, and we call it Golf Smarter Mulligans because you get your second chance at no charge. And you can find it wherever you get your favorite podcasts, either Golf Smarter or Golf Smarter Mulligans. And thank you so much for subscribing, and please leave a review if you haven't yet. I want other people to know about the show, and I think that you can be a great ambassador about that. I hope so. Please follow at Golf Smarter on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook. Read more about our weekly content on LinkedIn. Or if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions for me, just click on the Hey Fred button at golfsmarter.com.